Okay, here's the first part. Keys? I asked, just routine. Abby was heading out the door Friday evening, claiming another weekend escape to our little cottage. She turned, that familiar bright smile flashing a little too quickly. Too brightly maybe. Got 'em, mister. She jingled them in her hand, a silver flash against her perfectly manicured nails. Nails that, I noticed, were newly done, a vibrant red, definitely not cottage practical. It wasn't the red nails themselves. Abby loved getting her nails done. It was everything else lately, piling up, little things that didn't quite fit. Like this sudden obsession with the cottage. Before, it was too much of a drive. Bugs are awful, nothing to do. Now, suddenly, every weekend was cottage weekend. Have a good one, I said, trying to sound normal, like it was any other Friday. She leaned in for a kiss, pecked me on the cheek, a little too quick again, a little too distant? You too. See you Sunday evening. And then she was gone, the door clicking shut a little too firmly behind her. I stood there, in the silence she left, the goodbye still echoing faintly. Sunday evening. Right. That's what she said. But lately, Sunday evening had become late Sunday evening. Then just Monday morning, something came up. I walked into the bedroom, already feeling that familiar knot tightening in my gut. And that's when I saw it. The suitcase. Open on the bed. Packed. Or rather, strategically arranged. On top, a lacy black top, the kind she wore for, well, not for chopping wood at a rustic cottage. Next to it, a pair of stilettos, gleaming patent leather. Stilettos! For the cottage? I walked closer, heart starting to thump a little harder now. Underneath, I saw the edge of a dress, something shimmery, definitely not jeans and a sweater cottage attire. I picked up the black top, the lace soft and cool against my fingers. It smelled faintly of her usual vanilla perfume, but underneath, there was something else, something sharper, almost floral. Not mine, not our home. I went downstairs, mind racing, and poured myself a stiff drink. Whiskey, neat. I needed something to cut through the fog of confusion, the prickle of, what was it? Anxiety. No, more than that. Fear, maybe. Later, when she'd first mentioned these solo cottage trips, I'd asked, casually, what are you even going to do all weekend by yourself out there? She'd shrugged, all innocent. Oh, read, relax, get away from the city noise. It'll be good for me. Good for her. Right. And the clothes. The clothes were a new development. A few weeks ago, when I'd seen her packing a silk blouse, silk, I'd raised an eyebrow. Bit fancy for the woods, isn't it? I tried to joke. She just laughed, a light, tinkling sound. Oh, come on, Tom. Can't a girl want to feel pretty even when she's relaxing? Just because it's the cottage doesn't mean I have to look like a scarecrow all evening. Pretty. For who, exactly, in the middle of nowhere? The trees. The squirrels? The whiskey burned going down, but it didn't calm the knot in my stomach. I looked around our quiet living room, the silence amplifying the questions buzzing in my head. Something was definitely off. And that suitcase, those clothes. It wasn't just off. It felt like a flashing red warning sign I was desperately trying to ignore. But the flashing was getting brighter, harder to miss. And the weekend had just begun. The whiskey didn't help me sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that suitcase, those clothes, the red nails tapping a silent rhythm of doubt in my darkness. Saturday morning crawled by, slow and agonizing. I tried to distract myself. Cleaned the garage, something I'd been putting off for months, but even the smell of motor oil and sawdust couldn't scrub away the unease. By mid-afternoon, a restless energy had taken over. I was pacing the living room, trapped in a loop of what-ifs and maybes. Relax, Tom, you're being ridiculous, I muttered to myself, but the words felt hollow, bouncing off the walls of my increasingly claustrophobic house. Ridiculous? Was it ridiculous to feel a cold dread settling in your gut when your wife starts taking lingerie and stilettos to a secluded cottage she suddenly adores? By late afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. The need to know was a physical ache, a tightening in my chest that stole my breath. I told myself I was just going to check on her, make sure everything was okay. A surprise visit, that's what I'd call it if she asked. Yeah, right. Even to my own ears, it sounded pathetic. But the truth was, I was going to the cottage to find out what the hell was going on. The drive felt endless. Every mile marker was a hammer blow against my already frayed nerves. The familiar route, usually calming, seemed alien, the trees lining the road like silent, accusing witnesses. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. Each turn brought me closer to what? Confirmation. Disaster. As I pulled up to the cottage, the late afternoon sun cast long, eerie shadows across the small clearing. Her car was there, parked haphazardly, as if she'd rushed to get inside. The cottage itself looked deceptively peaceful, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Too peaceful. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, just staring at the front door. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. This was it. No turning back now. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car and walked towards the cottage. The front door wasn't quite closed, just slightly ajar. I hesitated, hand hovering above the wood. Should I knock? Announce myself? No. I needed to see to understand, before she had time to what? Hide things. Lie. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Abby! My voice sounded rough, unfamiliar even to myself. Silence. Thick, heavy silence, punctuated only by the crackling fire in the hearth. And then, a gasp. Abby was standing in the living room, near the small dining table. She spun around, eyes wide, face pale. And that's when I saw it. The dress. It was luminous, almost glowing in the dim light filtering through the window. A deep sapphire blue, clinging to her body like liquid, the fabric shimmering with every breath she took. It plunged low in the front, revealing far more cleavage than she ever showed in public, or even at home, lately. And it was short, scandalously short, barely skimming mid-thigh. But it wasn't just the style of the dress, it was what, or rather what wasn't underneath. As she moved, just slightly, I caught a glimpse, a shadow, the unmistakable absence of underwear. My breath hitched. She was standing there, practically naked under this shimmering, seductive dress, looking like she was ready for a stage? A party. Definitely not a quiet evening alone in a rustic cottage. And then I saw the table. Set for two. 2 wine glasses gleamed in the firelight. 2 plates, meticulously arranged. A half-empty bottle of wine, sweating slightly in the warmth. 2 chairs, pulled out, facing each other. Her face. It had gone from pale to flushed, a bright angry red creeping up her neck. Her eyes, wide moments ago, narrowed, hardening. The surprise had vanished, replaced by something else. Annoyance. Anger. Resentment. Tom, what are you doing here? Her voice was sharp, edged with irritation. Not surprise, not joy, not even a little bit of, oh, honey, what a nice surprise. Just pure, unadulterated annoyance. The air in the small cottage suddenly felt thick, suffocating. The fire, moments ago cozy, now seemed to roar, burning away any pretense of normalcy, any hope of a simple explanation. The dress, the table for 2, her reaction. It all slammed into me, a brutal wave of certainty. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was happening. Here. Now. I just wanted to see if you were okay. I stammered, the excuse weak, pathetic even to my own ears. Her lips curled into a thin, mocking smile. Okay. Of course, I'm okay. Why wouldn't I be? She gestured vaguely around the room, the gesture taking in the table, the fire, the everything. I'm just relaxing. Enjoying the peace and quiet. Relaxing. In a dress that looked like it belonged in a nightclub? Relaxing with a table set for two? Relaxing. For who? My mind was reeling, struggling to catch up with the reality unfolding before me. Confrontation. Accusation. Rage. They all warred within me, a chaotic storm of emotions. But looking at her face, that cold, hard mask settling over her features, something else took hold. A strange, chilling calm. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. Not here. Not now, when she was clearly prepared, expecting someone else. I needed to know more. I needed to understand the whole picture before I let loose the storm raging inside me. Right, I said slowly, forcing a smile, a weak imitation of my usual easy grin. Just wanted to say hi. Didn't want to interrupt your relaxation. I took a step back, towards the door. I'll let you get back to it. Her eyes narrowed further, suspicion flickering in their depths. She didn't believe me, not for a second. But she couldn't know what I was really thinking, what I was really feeling. The calm on my face was a mask, carefully constructed, hiding the turmoil beneath. Okay, she said, her voice still tight, wary. See you tomorrow then. Yeah, I said, and turned, walking out of the cottage, leaving her standing there, in her shimmering dress, by the table set for two. The door clicked shut behind me, this time a little too softly. And as I walked back to my car, the calm exterior began to crack, the storm inside threatening to break loose. But I held it in, clamped it down. For now. Because I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was just the beginning. And I was going to find out exactly what she was relaxing from, and with whom. The silence hung between us, thick and suffocating, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own pulse in my ears. Who? I finally managed to choke out, the word raw, torn from my throat. Who is the second place for, Abby? Who are you expecting? Her eyes darted around the room, anywhere but at me. She wrung her hands, the red nails flashing again, this time like frantic signals of distress. No one, she whispered, voice barely audible. What are you talking about? There's no one. Don't lie to me, Abby. My voice was low, dangerous, the calm facade cracking at last. Don't insult my intelligence. The dress, the table, you. Who is it for? She took a step back, as if physically recoiling from my words, from my presence. Her breath hitched, a small, panicked sound. It's not what you think, Tom, really. You're misunderstanding. Her voice was trembling now, laced with a desperate, brittle quality. Misunderstanding. I repeated, the word laced with disbelief, with scorn. Am I misunderstanding the dress that's practically painted on you? Am I misunderstanding the table set for two? Am I misunderstanding the fact that you look like you're about to go on a hot date, alone in the middle of nowhere? Each word was like a punch, thrown with quiet, controlled fury. She backed away further, stumbling slightly, until she bumped against the edge of the dining table. Her eyes were wide, pleading now, but I saw something else in them too, a flicker of calculation? Fear. Or was it just guilt, finally surfacing? Tom, please, just listen, she begged, her voice rising in pitch. It's not. I wasn't expecting anyone. The table. I wanted to make it nice for myself. To feel special. Is that so wrong? Special. I laughed, a short, harsh sound devoid of any humor. Special for yourself? In that dress? With a table set for two? Abby, stop. Just stop lying. It's over. Just tell me the truth. Who is he? She shook her head vehemently, tears welling in her eyes now, blurring her mascara. There's no he, Tom, I swear. You're imagining things. You're being paranoid. Paranoid. The word hung in the air, ludicrous, insulting. I walk in, find you dressed like a temptation, with a romantic dinner laid out for two, and I'm paranoid? She opened her mouth to speak, to deny again. I knew it, another flimsy, pathetic lie poised to fall from her lips. But before she could utter a word, we both froze. Click. A sharp, distinct sound cut through the tense silence. The unmistakable click of the front door latch. It opened. And then, almost instantly, it closed again, softer this time, a muffled thud that seemed to vibrate through the small cottage. We both stood motionless, listening, straining our ears. Silence descended again, heavy, pregnant with unspoken questions. My eyes locked onto Abby's. Her face had gone white, all color drained away, leaving her looking fragile, almost ghostly. But in her eyes, beneath the fear, I saw panic. Raw, undisguised panic. What was that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper now, the anger momentarily eclipsed by a cold, creeping dread. She didn't answer, couldn't answer. Her breath was coming in short, shallow gasps. She just shook her head again, eyes wide, fixed on the front door as if she expected it to burst open any second. I moved then, without thinking, propelled by a sudden urgent need to see. I strode past her, ignoring her startled flinch, and went to the window. Peeking cautiously through the edge of the curtain, I scanned the clearing outside. Nothing. Just the shadows lengthening in the late afternoon sun, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. Empty. Hello. I called out, my voice louder now, testing the silence. Is anyone there? Only the rustle of leaves in response. And then, a faint sound, carried on the breeze, from the direction of the neighboring cottage. A gate creaking open, then swinging shut with a metallic clang. Trevor's gate. Our neighbor, Trevor, who lived in the cottage just through the woods. Trevor. The name echoed in my mind, a dull, sickening thud. Trevor, who was always friendly, always neighborly, always around. Trevor, who Abby had mentioned a few times lately, in that casual, too casual way people do when they're trying to sound nonchalant about something significant. Trevor, who... It clicked into place with brutal, sickening clarity. The shadow at the window, the gate, her panic, the dress, the table for two. Trevor. It had to be Trevor. I turned back to Abby, who was still standing by the table, frozen, her eyes fixed on me, wide with terror now. I didn't need to ask. Her face, her silence, her sheer, palpable fear. It was all the confirmation I needed. Trevor, I said, the name heavy with disgust, with understanding. It was Trevor, wasn't it? He was here. He was supposed to be here. She finally found her voice, but it was a thin, reedy sound, barely a whisper. No. No, Tom, you're wrong. It wasn't. He was just passing by. He probably just wanted to borrow something. Sugar. I don't know. He wasn't coming for dinner. I swear. The lies tumbled out now, desperate, pathetic, each one more flimsy than the last. Sugar. I repeated, the word dripping with sarcasm. He was dressed for sugar, Abby. He ran away like he'd seen a ghost because he was after sugar? And the table for two. That was for sugar too, was it? I took a step towards her, and she flinched, actually flinched, as if she expected me to hit her. The sight of that flinch, that ingrained fear, something I'd never seen in her before, something I never wanted to see. It broke something inside me. The last vestiges of hope, of denial, of love. Shattered. Rage, raw and untamed, finally erupted. It wasn't a shouting rage, not yet. It was a cold, burning fury that started in my gut and spread through my veins, poisoning every thought, every feeling. Betrayal. That's what it was. Pure, unadulterated betrayal, served up with a shimmering blue dress and a table for two. You lying bitch, I hissed, the words from my lips like venom. You were going to cheat on me. Here. In our cottage. With him. With Trevor. Right under my nose. How long has this been going on? Tears streamed down her face now, mascara running in black streaks. She was sobbing, but there was no sincerity in it, no remorse, just fear and self-pity. "No, Tom, please. It's not like that. I swear, nothing happened. He just came over to talk. That's all. We were just going to have dinner. As friends." "Friends!" I roared, finally losing control, the shout echoing off the low cottage ceiling. "Friends in that dress? Friends with a table set for a romantic dinner? Friends who run away at the sound of the door opening? Don't you dare insult me with your pathetic lies anymore." I was shaking now, trembling with fury, with pain. The blue dress, once shimmering and seductive, now seemed to mock me, a garish symbol of her deceit. The table for two, the carefully arranged plates, the wine. It all felt like a calculated, deliberate act of betrayal, designed to humiliate, to wound. "Get out," I said, my voice low again, but this time, laced with steel, with finality. "Get out of my sight. Stay here. Stay in your little love nest. I'm going home. And don't bother coming back. Not to my house. Not to my life. As far as I'm concerned, you can stay right here, in this cottage, with your friend Trevor and Rot." I turned and walked away, not waiting for a response, not wanting to hear any more of her lies, her pathetic excuses. I walked out of the cottage, slamming the door behind me, the sound echoing like a final decisive break. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew, with a heart that felt like it had been ripped open and stomped on, that it was over. Completely, irrevocably over. And the cottage, our little escape, our sanctuary, was now just a tomb, filled with the ghosts of what we had lost, and the bitter stench of her betrayal. The drive home was a blur, the road unspooling before me like a meaningless ribbon of asphalt. I don't remember much of it, just the hum of the engine, the red taillights of the car ahead, the rhythmic swish of the wipers clearing a non-existent rain. My mind was strangely blank, wiped clean of thought, of feeling, almost. Just a dull ache behind my eyes and a leaden weight in my chest. I parked in the driveway, the familiar sight of our house suddenly alien, unwelcoming. It was just a house now. Not a home. Not anymore. The silence inside was deafening. It pressed in on me, amplified by the emptiness, the absence of her presence. Usually, even when we were just coexisting, there was a hum of Abby in the house. The clink of her jewelry, the murmur of the TV in the background, the faint scent of her vanilla perfume. Now a nothing. Just stark, echoing silence. I walked through the rooms like a ghost in my own life. The living room, where we'd spent countless evenings curled up on the sofa, now felt vast, impersonal. The kitchen, where we'd laughed over spilled coffee and burned dinners, cold and sterile. The bedroom. I couldn't even bring myself to go in there yet. I sank onto the sofa, the familiar cushions feeling hard, unwelcoming. I stared at the blank TV screen, seeing nothing, feeling nothing but this vast, hollow ache inside. It was like a physical wound, gaping and raw, slowly bleeding out all warmth, all life. Anger came first, a hot, corrosive tide rising in my gut, threatening to choke me. Rage at her lies, her betrayal, her audacity. Rage at Trevor, that smirking, friendly neighbor, for daring to what? To touch her? To kiss her? The thought sent a fresh wave of fury crashing through me. I wanted to smash something, to scream, to tear the house apart, brick by brick, until there was nothing left but rubble. But I just sat there, frozen, paralyzed by the sheer weight of it all. The anger was there, simmering, but it was overshadowed by something else, something deeper, more insidious. Sadness. A profound, bone-deep sadness settled over me, heavy as a shroud. Sadness for what we'd lost, for what we'd had, for what I thought we had. Years. We'd spent years building this life together, brick by brick, moment by moment. Christmases, birthdays, anniversaries, quiet evenings, shared dreams, whispered secrets. All of it, suddenly, tainted, poisoned by her lies. Were any of it real? Had any of it ever been real? Or had it all been a performance, a carefully constructed facade masking a secret life, a hidden betrayal? Doubt crept in, insidious and cold. Self-doubt. Had I been blind? Stupid. How could I have missed the signs? Were there signs? Little hints, subtle shifts in her behavior, in her eyes, that I'd ignored, dismissed, explained away because I wanted to believe in her, because I trusted her? The memory of our wedding day flashed in my mind. Abby in her white dress, radiant, beautiful, vowing to love and cherish me, till death do us part. Lies. All lies. Just empty words, spoken with a smile, a kiss, a practiced sincerity that meant absolutely nothing. I closed my eyes, but the images just intensified. Abby laughing, Abby crying, Abby holding my hand, Abby lying. The memories, once warm and comforting, now felt like shards of glass, twisting and cutting inside me. I got up, restlessly pacing again, the anger and sadness swirling inside me, a toxic cocktail of emotions. I walked to the window, looking out at the street, at the neat rows of houses, the manicured lawns, the utterly ordinary, unremarkable evening unfolding outside. And it felt surreal, utterly disconnected from the storm raging within me. How could the world keep turning, keep going on, when my own world had just imploded? I thought about calling someone, talking to someone, but the thought felt exhausting, pointless. What could I say? How could I explain this gaping hole in my chest, this raw, throbbing pain that felt like it would never heal? My wife is cheating on me. The words sounded trite, inadequate, utterly failing to capture the magnitude of the devastation. Hours crawled by, marked only by the deepening shadows outside, the growing emptiness inside. I hadn't eaten, couldn't eat. The whiskey bottle was still half full from last night, but the thought of drinking felt unappealing, pointless too. What was the point of numbing the pain, when the pain itself was the only thing that felt real anymore? As darkness settled completely, a strange quiet descended within me. The initial storm of anger and sadness began to subside, leaving behind a dull ache, a heavy weariness. I was still hurting, deeply, profoundly, but the frantic edge had dulled. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a numb acceptance. This was it. This was the reality. My marriage was over. My life, as I knew it, was gone. In the quiet darkness, a small spark flickered, almost imperceptible at first. Not hope, not yet. But something different. A flicker of resolve? A tiny ember of strength? It was faint, fragile, barely there, but it was there. And as I sat there, in the silence and the darkness, I clung to it, this tiny spark in the vast emptiness. The pain was still there, sharp and insistent, but beneath it, something was shifting. A sense of clarity, perhaps? A dawning realization that, as devastating as this was, as much as it hurt, life wasn't over. It was different, irrevocably changed, scarred, yes, but not over. I was still here. I was still breathing. And somehow, someway I would get through this. The emotional scars, I knew, would be deep, lasting. They wouldn't magically disappear overnight, or even over months, maybe years. The trust, once broken, might never fully heal. The memory of her betrayal would likely linger, a shadow in the corners of my mind. Anxiety tightened its grip again, a familiar cold knot in my stomach. The future stretched before me, uncertain, daunting, filled with unknowns. But for the first time since walking into that cottage and seeing Abby in that dress, I didn't feel completely lost. The pain was still immense, the sadness profound, but beneath it all, a fragile sense of something akin to determination began to take root. I was broken, yes, but not shattered. I was hurting, but not defeated. Not yet. Not completely. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start with. Just enough to face the long, dark night, and the even longer, uncertain days to come. The scars would remain, a permanent reminder of the betrayal, but perhaps in time, they would become just that, scars. Proof of survival. Not symbols of defeat, but marks of a battle fought and, somehow, endured. The anxiety lingered, a constant companion, but it no longer felt all-consuming. It was just there. And I, somehow, was still here too. The word divorce felt heavy on my tongue, heavy as the legal documents suddenly sitting on my kitchen table. It was just a word, just ink on paper, but it carried the weight of everything. The shattered promises, the broken vows, the years of shared life reduced to a stark, clinical ending. Saying it out loud to my lawyer, then signing my name, it was like carving it in stone, sealing the tomb of our marriage. There was no fanfare, no drama, just a quiet, almost anticlimactic finality. And in that finality, strangely, there was a sliver of relief. The first few weeks after, the silence in the house shifted. It wasn't just empty anymore, it was mine. Exclusively mine. And that, in itself, was a revelation. For so long, everything had been ours, we, US. Now it was just I, me, mine. It was unsettling, disorienting, but also liberating. I started small. Rearranged the living room furniture, just shifted the sofa and chairs, but it opened up the space, let in more light. It was a tiny thing, almost insignificant, but it felt like breathing room. Like making space for myself again, physically and metaphorically. Then I dug out my old guitar. It had been gathering dust in the attic for years, a relic of a younger, freer version of myself. My fingers felt stiff, clumsy at first, the chords rusty in my memory. But as I slowly, painstakingly, coaxed out a few hesitant notes, a forgotten melody surfaced. It was clumsy, imperfect, but it was mine. It was a sound I was creating for myself, in the quiet of my own house. I called Mark, an old college buddy I'd lost touch with over the years. We'd bonded over music, late-night talks, and youthful dreams. "Hey man, it's Tom," I said, the words feeling awkward at first. "Long time no see." His voice on the other end was instantly warm, familiar, like no time had passed at all. We talked for hours that first night, catching up, laughing, just connecting. It was like rediscovering a part of myself I'd buried under the weight of routine and responsibility. Then there was hiking. Something Abby had always hated. Too sweaty, too many bugs, boring. But I remembered how much I used to love it. The solitude of the trails, the smell of pine needles and damp earth, the quiet challenge of pushing myself physically. I bought new hiking boots, a sturdy backpack, and started exploring the trails around the city. The first few hikes were tough, my lungs burning, my muscles aching. But with each step, with each climb, I felt something else too, a sense of strength, of resilience building within me. The physical exertion cleared my head, washed away the lingering fog of sadness and anger, replaced it with a quiet sense of accomplishment. The house started to change, subtly, gradually, reflecting the changes within me. Abby's pastel watercolors came down from the walls, replaced by some bolder, more abstract prints I found at a local gallery. The floral cushions on the sofa disappeared, replaced by plain, textured ones in earthy tones. It wasn't a deliberate erasure of her, not exactly. More like reclaiming the space, making it authentically, unapologetically mine. One evening, sitting on the porch, guitar in hand, overlooking the garden I'd started tending with a newfound enthusiasm, it hit me. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my heart, a shadow in my memories. But it wasn't all-consuming anymore. It didn't define me. It was a scar, yes, but scars are proof of healing, not of defeat. The affair, the betrayal, the lies. It had been a brutal, devastating blow. It had shattered my world, ripped apart the fabric of my life. But in the wreckage, something unexpected had happened. Space had opened up. Space for me to breathe, to grow, to rediscover who I was, who I wanted to be, outside the confines of US. The end of the marriage wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. A painful, unwanted beginning, born out of betrayal and heartbreak, but a beginning nonetheless. It was a chance to rebuild, not just my house, but my life, from the ground up. To create a space that was truly mine, filled with things that genuinely nourished me, surrounded by people who truly saw and valued me for myself. Looking out at the sunset, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and purple, a wave of something akin to hope washed over me. The future wasn't some clear, perfectly paved path stretching out before me. It was uncertain, unpredictable, maybe even a little scary. But it was also open. Full of possibilities I hadn't even considered before, doors I hadn't even known existed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a quiet sense of excitement, a stirring of anticipation for what might lie ahead. The scars would remain, reminders of the pain endured, but they were also maps, charting a course towards a new horizon, a future I would build, piece by piece, on my own terms. The anxiety, the fear, they hadn't vanished completely, but they no longer held me captive. They were just whispers now, fading against the rising chorus of my own quiet determination, my own rediscovered self. And in that, I found a strength I never knew I possessed, and a fragile but genuine sense of hope for the new beginning that lay ahead.